Town Band Banter with Doc and Dave. Every week, two longtime friends and colleagues in the world of music, David Price and Donald Doc Smith, get together to discuss the triumphs as well as the twists and turns of lifelong learning for the dedicated members of thousands of civilian community music ensembles of every shape and size. Your comments and suggestions are always welcomed through email as info@townbandbanter.com, Facebook, Town Band Banter, and Instagram, #TownBandBanter. And now for our hosts, Doc and Dave.
All right, Here we go. Episode number 6.
Damn, I'm not used to being so close to you here. This is, thank God he took a shower today. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm even more grateful for that.
Yeah, you're right. Right.
So we're and even more grateful because we wouldn't want to offend our guest. We have with us today Dr. Brian Cardany, who is someone who took my place actually at the University of Rhode Island and has done wonderfully since then.
Wow.
And
how many years you been there now?
22 so far.
Wow.
And counting, right?
And counting, yeah.
The plan was, never mind. That's another.
Well, yeah, that's not, yeah. I'll just say the plan is different than I thought it was going to be.
That is how life goes.
Yeah,
but
it's the way it works out.
Well, since we're going there, like what your plan through the path of life, all the way through band. I don't know much about when you were younger, like in playing. And then there's what we were talking about just before. I get so scared about saying University of Arizona or Arizona State. I can never sort them out. I think as of today, I have that sorted out, which one you went to. But talking about being offensive to someone, if you pick the wrong one, I wouldn't want to offend you. But if you could give us a thumbnail sketch of what got you to here, you or I, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, sure. Well, the very beginning, I started playing trumpet in 7th grade. Enjoyed it, played all through middle school, high school, joined all the bands, jazz band. I think I did marching band pretty much, ever since high school. And then when I went to college, I went to James Madison University based on advice from a friend of mine that saw the marching band there, who was playing they were playing like Beethoven on the field or something. And they're pretty big, strong band then, about 250, 260.
At that point, it wasn't 400 then, but
it wasn't quite where it is now, but but I went there because I was like, okay, I want to play my trumpet. I'm going to go do that. And I did the music ed degree because it seemed like a sensible thing, but I didn't know what I really wanted to do. But I did the whole thing, and I found out by the time I got to student teaching, I really enjoyed, I played in everything I could. And I just knew I enjoyed teaching, actually. I was like, okay, I want to be a teacher. So I ended up getting a job where I student taught in Page County, Virginia, in rural Virginia in Shenandoah Valley. Spent a couple of years there. I think I could admit that because of some idealism and naivete, the high school principal decided not to renew my contract after 2 years. So I kind of took a year floating around, working at Tower Records and subbing a little bit. And then I got a job as an assistant director at a high school in Maryland, Quince Orchard High School in Gaithersburg, Maryland. I was the only assistant director at a high school in that. It was one of the bigger programs.
Wow. Yeah.
With Bill Holland, who was a really good friend and was a mentor at the time. Did that for 3 years, and I was like, it's time to go to grad school. And then I got into Arizona State University, and I went.
Yeah, because the other one would have been terrible.
And I went there in part because I thought it'd be an adventure to go out west, and also because they gave me a band TA-ship, so a teaching assistantship. Right. I was basically hired by Robert Fleming, who was the marching band guy at the time. And so I did 4 years, and I was looking to do a doctorate. At this point, I finally decided I wanted to work at the college level, so I knew I needed a doctorate. And I was going to go somewhere else and get a doctorate in conducting, I thought. And then he convinced me to stay because he was just going to retire in 2 years. So he said, hey, we're working well together. Why don't you stay and finish up with me? And I'm like, okay. So I stayed 2 more years. So I got my master's and doctorate in music ed at Arizona State. And the whole time I worked with the entire band program from the chamber winds, conducted the pep band, Wind Symphony. I started my own brass ensemble. So I did as much as I could there. And then my first and only college job was University of Rhode Island in 2002. And I've been here ever since.
We decided to stay here. And the grad assistant who kind of followed me after Penn State, he was one of the other candidates when I came here.
Oh, really? Wow.
A couple college jobs. And then he ended up going to Temple, took that job after he didn't get this one, and at URI. And then now he went out to Oregon State for a little while.
Hmm.
So he's a Beaver, and now he's the director of bands at Pitt, University of
Oh,
Pittsburgh.
wow,
But
cool.
that's, that's what I kind of saw too, that, I needed to make like two more moves before I wanted to go. And I just didn't want to move the family anymore. Once we bought this
Yeah.
house, my wife said, I am not moving out of this house. So
Right.
we kind of left the
And
door
whatever
open.
she says goes, pal.
I kind of left the
Yes.
door open for me, but but I agreed. It was just a great place to live and raise a family. So that's maybe why you hung out for 22 years.
Well, that's a lot of it. And also, my wife also teaches at the college level, and
Right.
because of various circumstances through our time here, we both have jobs at URI, and it's really hard to find that at the college level, to have two college people working full time. So in the end, this just seems, yeah, we're definitely all in now. So
There's
yeah,
nothing wrong with that. So then somewhere along the way, there's this thing called the American Band,
right.
right? Which was, maybe if you could give us a thumbnail history of that too, because I know that Fran Marciniak brought it back to life. And
Right.
all of these bands, every band you talk to, we are the oldest band in the United States, and all of these sort of things that go on. So what is the American Band's claim to fame, and what's the thumbnail sketch of their history?
Well, it was the official charter is from 1837, and it's been more or less continuously active since then. A little more sporadic in the 20th century, but pretty consistent. So it is one of the oldest. It definitely is. I think the Allentown band
Right.
maybe was 2 years older,
The 1830s as well, 1830.
1835 or
I
something.
think so.
And all of these, and there's probably a few others from that period, the 1830s, maybe they're out around, but we're definitely one of the very oldest. And and probably the most famous band in its day that's still around. It's a different thing than it was then back in the 1800s,
Started
but
as a brass band, correct?
it started as a brass band, as I think they all did. And then around the middle of the 19th century, I think led by Patrick Gilmore, but David Wallace Reeves was directing the American band, and he's the one that added the woodwinds to the brass band, as
Right.
far as I understand it. And led the band from like 1866 till 1900, basically, almost continuously. So
That's amazing. Yeah, Patrick Gilmore just has his finger in everything in bands in the United States. It's just
yeah,
incredible. We did that in an earlier episode and did a little research, and I had no idea. Like New Year's Eve at Times Square in New York, Patrick Gilmore.
yeah,
Like there are so many things that he had his finger in that he's pretty amazing, and that he touched the American band along the way too is pretty remarkable. So then Fran Marciniak revived it, who was the former director and deceased, unfortunately. I do miss him. He was very, very nice to me when I first came here.
mhm.
Someone you missed meeting, unfortunately. But he revived it, and it started thriving, mostly because of the membership that I think sustains today. It's mostly like music. Maybe you could describe that.
Right. He started, I think it probably was founded among students he had at Rhode Island College, or alumni at the time, right when he started. And we still have, I believe, 6 people that were in that initial group and started in fall 1978 that are still playing.
Wow.
So it's really incredible. In fact, pretty much the front row, the flute section and the low brass section, I think you know some of those folks.
I do. Yes.
And then several others that maybe started within those first 5 to 10 years are still playing with the group too. So there's a lot of tradition there within this new version of it as an adult volunteer band.
Right.
So
And then
yeah.
when Fran retired, did he did he pass away and then there was an opening in the band, or did he stop doing the band before that? I forget what happened.
No, the story I've heard, he died in 1996. He was still working, the director of bands at Rhode Island College, and still running the American band. In fact, apparently he was supposed to go to the doctor to get some work on his heart, and he postponed it because he had an American band concert
It was
of
commensurate.
performance.
It was
And
commensurate.
then he didn't make it to the concert. He actually passed away like the day before a performance.
Now that's coming
Wow.
back to me. Yeah.
And then I think Gene Pollard actually filled in that day.
I
And then
think
he
it was
ended up
members.
taking
I
over.
think it was members actually, because I
Or
called.
was it?
It was one of the more stunning phone calls of my entire life, because I called up to ask him a question about something, and they said, "Well, he's not here," in a weird way, And I said, "Well, is he in a meeting?" And they said, "Sort of, with God,"
Yeah.
because they had
Wow.
just gotten the news in the office. And I was the first call that came in after that. And I said, "Oh my gosh, what do you have commencement tonight? What are you doing? You know, like
That's what it
you
was,
need me,
right?
I'll get in the car and I'll be, like I'll get up there." And by the time I got there, some members said we'll conduct, but what a horrific moment. But the American band survived that, which I'm sure Fran would be very happy about, that it survived and thrives. So today, one of the gigs that I got to play with them was out on Martha's Vineyard. Do you still do that? What is the performance schedule?
You're right. That one, I was on the very last time, well, I think it was 2003 or something, was the very last summer they ever did that gig.
Such a long
And I was
time for
fortunate
the
to go to
older
that one.
members. Yeah, it's
Yeah. And there's a few things I think they used to do regularly that have kind of, it's all morphed a little bit. But what we're doing now, like this summer, actually, we're finally getting back, I think, into a very vibrant summer schedule. We just played at the Roger Williams Park last week for the first time in probably 30 years or something
right.
for the group. And we just did something at Mount St. Charles Academy. They have this special event for their community where we with the fireworks at the end, and we were like the finale ensemble that led up to the fireworks.
Oh wow! And
We're
for the
playing
people
at the
from
Rhode
around
Island.
here, Catholic
Sure.
private school, you say
Right,
some, yeah, Mount St.
right
Charles.
up in Woonsocket.
Yeah.
We're playing at the Rhode Island Veterans Home on Sunday. We're playing at John Brown House in Providence on July 3rd. Then we're playing at Glen Manor in Portsmouth. We've been playing it for a long time in July 11th. And then on July 21st, I think it is, that Sunday, I think it's the 21st or 22nd, one of those days. We're playing in Newport, Turo Park, that Mark Stickney, another connection we have.
Yeah.
Mark Stickney is now in charge of this musical organization in Newport. So, and he's bringing in community groups to play there.
What is your normal concert hall? Is there somewhere that like call home?
That's an interesting thing because we don't have a concert hall like that, which I really wish we did because it's every year. What I've sort of used URI now and then. They'll let us play for little to nothing at URI, luckily, since I worked there. So, but it's not the best venue because it's not central to where like most of the people are.
Right.
So it'd be great to have a place we could play regularly, but since we don't have that. That's one thing they had at Rhode Island College when Fran Marciniak was doing it. They could always play at Roberts Hall or something. And
Right. I remember that. That's where I heard them. That was the first time I heard them.
it was always built into their system. And that's one thing I would love to have eventually, because we could have like a 3 or 4 like concert series of concerts that it could be planned every year in the same place in the same weekend.
Right.
And right now it's kind of every single season is different. And sometimes gigs are added on like over the course of the season. So I'm constantly making adjustments and deciding how to use different music. And so that's one of the interesting challenges of the current formulation of the group. But it's also fun because we get to do a lot of different things.
Right. The membership remains fairly constant, though, right?
Yeah, there's a pretty solid, I'd say there's about 40 people that are fully 100% into it consistently year after year after year.
Right.
And then there's a little bit of turnover at the fringes. There's people that join for a couple years and then their life situation changes and they have to drop out, and normal community band stuff.
Well, that's kind of what our show is about.
Yeah.
All of that stuff, like those snowbirds. People,
Right.
we could play the concerts from April through October or November, and then we're going to be in Florida or somewhere,
Yeah.
or in Arizona. So then next step is, what do you see for the future of that band? Did you just kind of hint at that, try to find a concert venue that you could land in?
That is one thing I'd like to, maybe we could find a home, whether it's a high school somewhere or some venue where we can make it regular. We talk about it sporadically. It'll take an effort probably from the board and some of the membership to kind of help make something like that happen probably. But I mean, right now we can probably find a venue to go to regularly, but we'd have to rent it. And it generally costs $1,500 to $2,000, I think, to rent even a high school auditorium in a lot of places.
You have
And
unlimited funding, right? Where does your funding?
most of it
Not
comes
like
from
the
just getting.
Jamestown group here, it's a little bit different. In Jamestown, he just whines a little bit about the fact they need a little money, and somebody comes up with a check. That's
Wow.
pretty much it.
Or we put an ad in the paper. I mean, that's how they've always done it. That's their funding mechanism every year or two.
That's amazing.
Usually it's 2 or more years.
Yeah.
When the funds are starting to dwindle, they'll put an ad in the paper and a whole pile of checks come in.
Wow. I mean, we should try that. I don't know. We don't seem to have that kind of thing going on.
What about grant money? Do you have any grant money?
We try. We're not very good at it. We've probably pulled in $4,000 or $5,000 over 10 years. Little things here and there. But the criteria have changed, and you have to have like special projects, and it's hard because like I said, it's hard to plan like a big special project a year ahead of time that the grant folks would accept as, and it's usually now it's like you have to connect with diverse communities, inner city communities, I don't know, different cultures and stuff, which is not, I don't know, it's not as simple as it seems as we've tried to do some things, actually talk to some of the high school directors in Providence and things. And it's not a straight ahead thing. You have to,
Yeah,
you
there's, I kind of ran up. I've been playing down the Westerly Band.
oh yeah.
I'm part of their board down there, and we were talking about getting grants. And it's like you said, it's very, very hard to just say, okay, we'll just apply for some money. There has to be a specific something, and it has to involve, a certain portion of the community or something of that sort. It has to be very specially crafted, and it doesn't always fit your agenda or your schedule. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
That's
So
very true.
it's a little awkward.
Yeah, it's not simple. Like I think maybe 10, 20 years ago, you could just get grant money because you were a nonprofit group doing cool things, but it's not that way anymore.
Right.
There was a lot of money there. I was on a committee recently for awarding some grant money, and there's more money than I thought available, but people have their angles, like that they have all this worked out, like what they need to plan to get that money, and then it sustains the group through the whole year,
Yeah.
but it's for one project, and that works really well. Well,
Yeah.
that's cool. So American Band of the Future, you're probably, what's the oldest member?
I want to say maybe Kevin Kane.
Okay.
He's in his 70s. I'd say around 75.
Terribly old. What about
And
you?
there's a few others.
I'm 70.
Okay, well, yeah, so maybe we're relatively young. I don't know. There's Bob Izzo. I know he's above 70. There's a few in that kind of range.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a safe range still, because we're talking about, some geriatric, like what happens
Yeah.
once you get into your 80s and beyond.
Yeah.
And then, but the intergenerational stuff is really cool too. What's the youngest member of the band?
We do have couple people right out of college. So right around 22, 23.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So it's kind of that full adult range. Plus, sometimes we'll have a college member or two. You have to be 18 to be in it. That's
Oh,
actually one of the stipulations.
right.
But we don't have any current college students currently in there. It's all people at least who graduated. But there's several people in their 20s though too.
I joke with the Jamestown band that it's a select ensemble. Whoever selects to be in it is in it.
Right.
Is there an audition to get in, or is it recommendation, or
It's audition. It's audition.
audition?
I have the power to just appoint someone if I absolutely know that, basically I have to know that they can play.
Right.
And then I usually have go through the audition process, even though I know it's a given, so that the section leader can hear them play, or maybe a couple members of the section. I think it's good for them to kind of understand how we all play together. And there is a tradition of, we want a certain level of musicianship so we can pull off a lot of things that are expected of the group. So
You do. I mean, your literature, it's a little bit because you have that core group and they're all
yeah,
solid musicians. Setting repertoire is different than many of these bands that kind of have people in and out, and you don't really know the one oboe player is not going to be here for the next 2 months, so next 2 months.
yeah, that's true. And I do feel it's really one of the privileges is I can program like grade 5 music with confidence, you know, where, I know a lot of groups, that would be a real stretch. There's some pieces though that are just more trouble than they're worth because it is still a trend, it's still a community group and people are in and out of rehearsal. I always feel like we have to have 6 rehearsals for a concert so that everyone has at least 2 of them. Isn't it at least 2 of them? That kind of thing.
Fine.
Because there's definitely people that don't show up all the time because of work issues or family issues. So it's not perfect by any means, but
Like you said,
but
part of it, they're not, that's not their profession. It's
yeah,
their life, but not their livelihood. Music is really important to them, and I found we unfortunately lost 3 members of the Jamestown band one
mm,
year, passed away, and 2 out of 3 of them, in lieu of flowers, make a donation to the band. And when
well,
I talked to the folks at the funeral home, the family members, they said this is all he talked about. This is the most important thing in his life.
Yeah.
This is what, so we talk about lifelong learning all the time in education, but this is it. I mean, this is what lifelong learning really is all about. All right. So we have a couple questions for you. We ask every guest, like, what was your most memorable experience with the community music ensemble? Like, you didn't mention being in any of them when you were younger. Were you in a younger?
I have done some. Actually, there's two, no, a community band I played in when I was teaching in Maryland. There was a band actually in Falls Church, Virginia that I played in. And one of our students, high school students' fathers was also a band director. So he led this band. And they didn't have a percussionist. So I was the percussionist sitting on a drum set. I remember distinctly playing Suite of Old American Dances
Oh,
with a drum set. Boom chick, boom chick, boom chick, boom chick, all that stuff with, just, yeah. And I didn't like it because,
yeah.
I mean, it was okay to be independent, but,
Special
you know,
person to play.
packing up a, setting up and packing up a drum set for every single rehearsal and concert, I just don't want to do that. I don't know.
Learned
I,
empathy for those
yeah,
percussionists in the back of
yeah.
the band. Yeah.
I've been
Yeah, I have a lot of empathy for percussionists.
I'm a lifelong percussionist, and
Oh, are you?
yes,
Okay.
I am. And I can remember a big part of my life is just the fact that, well, whatever car you get has to have enough room to be able to throw a whole drum set in there.
Yep.
It's a big factor, you know what
It
I mean?
really is.
But you're right. But you get used to it. It's like everything else. You get used to it,
It's
Well,
part of the,
I may have biased that question. I'm going to ask it again because leave it wide open. Was there one like really memorable experience with any kind of community band?
the one that really sticks with me, and it's somewhat recent actually. There's a lot of really great experiences, but towards the end of COVID, it was a couple years ago, I guess. The American band, we were approached by Noreen Inglesi and Notable Works,
Right.
if you know, yeah.
No.
And she had some grant money to support a special concert, and she wanted a band to connect with her group. And we basically did something. It was kind of basically a thing about environmental concerns. And I would put together this, I think, interesting concert about the environment. Includes some David Maslanka piece and a Mark Camphouse and I don't know, a bunch of different stuff. And it was really, really kind of cool. Nancy Galbraith piece. This was a really fun program. And at this event that we did, the American Band just got into the Rhode Island Music Hall of Fame in 2020 officially. But this was the thing I think it was May of 2022. We finally were able to be, things had cleared up enough that they were able to have a concert and have a special event. So this is when they presented the trophy to us. And we were kind of spread out in the weird COVID set, like 2 levels and everything in that hall. So the whole thing was just a big event. The president of URI was there. We have a new president. There's very, very cool. So that's a really memorable thing because it just so many aspects of the community came together and the history of the band with that Rhode Island Music Hall of Fame acknowledgement. So I don't know. That was really, really cool.
Yeah, that's a great answer. What
Yeah.
about how did participating in music ensembles affect you? We may have already kind of answered that.
Well, I've just grown more and more appreciative of the power of them, knowing so many, because I've had those conversations with those people, and it's so meaningful to the people that really commit to it. And I've actually decided I kind of gave up on the traditional academic life, but I think I work with several community ensembles in addition to American Band. And I think this is sort of my passion is like lifelong music making, from beginner to 80 years old, just you can make music and you can all make music together. And I get to actually do that in practice on a regular basis. And I find that a real privilege. So
You get to be a guest on shows just like this that are
exactly. Yeah.
Well, you want to mention because you had mentioned when we were setting up for this one group that you're traveling with this summer, which is it doesn't have to be an instrumental group because we do romps, the jazz group, and I'm going to talk to Vicky Boyle sometime soon is going to be a guest for the string project
Nice.
in Bristol.
Mhm.
So it's vocal groups are no problem either. We're well known for that in the area. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've been fortunate, partly because of my wife, that we've been very connected with the Chorus Westerly, which is one of the great community organizations. Well, and you, David, you would know, of course, right? They're a huge entity in Westerly, and I think just an amazing, they're one of the very few groups that own their own building. you know, and they have several full-time staff and this amazing like organization. And we've been singing off and on over the years with them for a long time and going up to the Ogons camp when they used to do their camp up there. And they're still kind of connected to that up in New Hampshire, where their founding director, George Kent, and his family own a
Right.
camp up in New
Yeah.
Hampshire.
So,
Oh, okay.
like the future of community bands, you kind of covered with American Band was one of the questions. And, you know, I think we covered a lot in this. I really enjoyed getting to know a little bit more about you and feeling more comfortable that it is ASU, that I don't have to worry about.
ASU, yeah.
I won't make that mistake ever again. And I look forward to doing some more commiserating with you. Sorry, I'm the
Sure.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah,
And
right.
let's hopefully we'll get together again. And thank you so much for doing this, Brian. And good luck with the American Band. And
Thank you.
all that you're doing. Happy travels with the Westerly Chorus.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
we'll wrap it up with that.
Yeah,
so
there
in the
we go.
meantime, just keep on playing.